What is going on, everybody? We are back once again with another edition of Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast. I'm fired up to be back. Obviously, I missed an entire week. I was on Monday, I was on Tuesday night, had the day off yesterday. I feel like I've been gone from the daily forever. It's Thursday, September 19th, fresh off AEW Dynamite on Wednesday nights, which we always love to cover. I'm stoked. I'm Clark Taylor, and if I'm going to be hosting this show, I need a sweet crew to break it down. Two absolute experts hanging with me. It may not be a Tuesday, but first and foremost, I am going to send this one out to the DMV. And I'm not talking about the one with the lines. I'm talking about DC, Maryland, Virginia. Get the twos up. What's up, Shadi?
Was good, bro. It's a throwback to our old stomping grounds on Thursday for throwback in a way, right? Doing the AEW
It's a throwback.
Yeah, throwback. But I'm happy that you back, back on daily broadcast. And I'm happy to it's 2 weeks in a row where I get to talk AEW review. I'm excited for it. Let's get it.
I love it. It's always a good time talking AEW, and it's always a good time on Thursdays. No doubt about that. We've got a sweet third riding with us, though. I'm going to have to toss it all the way across the pond to our most talented singer at Wrestling Republic by miles, and also our AEW reviewer, and I would say resident expert. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but David Sheldon, what's good, bro?
Good evening. I am now going to sing this whole review. No, I'm not. It's all right. You can stay. You can stay. You can stay. You don't have to leave. It's all right. I'm not going to sing anymore. Hello, everybody. Very nice to be here talking AEW Dynamite. My first in my new surroundings in my new apartment in London. Still unpacking and still sorting things out. But very excited to be here discussing a good episode of AEW Dynamite, I thought. Some good to unpack, some not so good to unpack, but very excited. I'm enjoying sort of being more of a regular now on the Dynamite shows. I can expand on my thoughts from the written reviews that I do, which is very good fun, and nobody I'd rather be doing it with than Shad and Clark. So let's get at it.
Let's get after it 100%. I'm stoked about it. It was a really fun episode, and like you said, we're getting in a rhythm here, breaking down Dynamites. I'm enjoying it. It's one of my favorite shows of the week. I look forward to it. You know, we haven't always gotten Wednesday night wrestling, right? There's Monday Night Raw has been a staple basically my entire life. SmackDown has moved around as far as days are concerned, but the consistency of Dynamite on Wednesdays, I just look forward to it. As an NFL fan, it doesn't interfere with anything. It doesn't mess with college football. You know, the NBA might get in the way a little bit, but I dig breaking down Dynamite on Thursdays myself, David. Let's talk, though, about Chris Jericho and Orange Cassidy. Obviously, it was the show opener, so why wouldn't we start with it as well? Fun match, 20 minutes, long time. Loaded orange punch for the finish. I mean, I can't get enough of Orange Cassidy. I don't know how many more times I need to see him cross paths with Jericho, Shad, so I'm going to toss it to you and ask you about that. I feel like we have seen a lot of it.
You want to know
kind of the end.
Do you want to know what's crazy is I was watching AEW Dynamite with my lovely wife last night, and she is not as much of an AEW fan as she is of WWE, but she likes Orange Cassidy a lot because she thinks that he's a fun, interesting character. And she was like, I remember them feuding back when it was COVID time, when they had the Mimosa Madness, like with the orange juice match, and they had like the presidential debate. So these two have been tied together for a while now. Like you said, we have seen them, run this rodeo feud for a little bit. A lot of callbacks within the storyline to that. It is a different Chris Jericho. This is the learning tree Chris Jericho. This is a different Orange Cassidy. This is the conglomerate Orange Cassidy. It just doesn't feel rejuvenated of a feud for my interest than it was 4 years ago than it does now. So it has become tiresome. They've fought each other throughout these last few years and whatnot. But all in all, I mean, I will say this. I think the criticism towards the learning tree and Chris Jericho is getting a little tiresome from people because I feel like we have sold ourselves to dislike Jericho and dislike what he does to, not look at it as objectively. I think the learning tree is good television for AEW. I think Chris Jericho hears the criticism and he plays off of it, which I think is a very smart thing to do when you talk about being a professional wrestler. That's why he's been in the business for as long as he has. That's why he's been able to, play within different characters so much as he has. But in regards to the storyline and just the match itself, my issue is, it was a little tiresome. And second, the match was a little too long. Like you said, 20 minutes is entirely too long. Nothing as creative to make you drawn into it. You kind of see a lot of the greatest hits played within it. And it's becoming to a point where I'm just like, I would rather see them do some different stuff. And I think that's just where we run into the problem is I feel like Orange Cassidy and Chris Jericho kind of play the same role in regards to storylines when they are on TV these last few years. I feel like Orange Cassidy could maybe either take some time away or do something different, maybe add some different element to his character. For Chris Jericho, I want to see them just be a trios. We have a trios title. I want to see him allow Brian Keith and Big Bill kind of play more of an implement towards it than him just doing his shtick. Because I think it is beneficial to have them in the learning tree. I think a lot of people say, no, he's ruining them. I disagree with that because they're not going to get on TV if they're not with Chris Jericho. So let's appreciate them getting that, no pun intended, TV time, but let's let them grow within it. So, decent. I don't think it was as bad as people say it was. I think it was a solid match. I did like the ending a lot, but it was just a little too long. And I'm hoping we could kind of get away from this, but I think there's still a little bit more to be added within this feud.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that you brought up there that I really, really loved is the idea of a trios run. Because, like you said, as much as they've gotten under our skin with the high guys and all of that, and Jericho and TV time and whatnot, Brian Keith and Big Bill are getting featured on TV. And
Exactly.
it to me, direction-wise, that's just the most logical. I also agree with a lot of what you said about comparing back to the original Jericho Cassidy feud. That makes things really difficult when it comes to this one. It just changes things slightly.
It's super silly.
It is. We've got a really interesting comment, though, here really quickly from Numero One Superfly, which is, even though I like Jericho versus Cassidy, I feel as though it should have been placed maybe in the middle of the show instead of the opening of the show. Obviously, David, you reviewed last night's show. Don't give away your rating just yet, but a little insight on that. Do you think it would have benefited from being placed elsewhere on the card, or did you like the card placement? And then your thoughts on the match as a whole, as well as the direction of the learning tree. Hi, guys. Oh, muted. You're muted. You're good.
I am muted. I apologize. Overall, there's a lot to unpack with this match. And this sort of wider discussion, because I obviously watched Ben Allison's Allison analysis earlier on today, and he massively took against the card placement, putting Jericho at the start. I don't think Jericho, a bit like Shad said, I don't think Jericho right now can do anything right. Because he could have the greatest promo, the greatest match, and people will still trash it. And so, like Shad said, I don't think he's being treated especially fairly. My overall thoughts is I agree I wouldn't have put it on first. The reason I think they put it on first is because they're trying to recapture the Cassidy formula, which is through late 2022 into 2023, Orange Cassidy would open most weeks of Dynamite with the international title defense. And that was great because you were always guaranteed a good match because it was Orange Cassidy, and Orange Cassidy he's my favorite wrestler in AEW. I've said this several times, but he at the time I think was genuinely really hot. I would have swapped this with Ricochet Mortos. I would have started with that because the thing is, both of the matches I thought were good. Ricochet Mortos and Jericho Cassidy. Ricochet Mortos was a fast match that started hot, that never let up its momentum. Jericho and Cassidy started hot and then got quite cold for a little bit. And it got slow. And it got a bit boring. Then it picked up again when had the beach break, I think, through the announce table or something through the announce table, and then you had some quite ingenious counters, and the match got better. There were really good stuff sort of spliced through it. But overall, I would have put this later in the show, and I would have given Ricochet and Mortos that punch of opening the show. We're not going to talk about that match today, by the way, because we've got so much to get through. But Beast Mortos, I think, is an unbelievable talent. And can Beast Mortos please be on TV every week? And can they please push him to the moon? Because I think he might be my new favorite wrestler in AEW. Anyway, coming out of away from that conversation, I like Jericho's character at the moment. I always go back to with Jericho that he did one promo on Rampage where the Hi Guys shtick was laced with malice. And there was like this deadness behind the eyes where Jericho looked like he was going insane. And I got so excited by that. And I screamed to the high heavens to anyone who'd listen how this was going to be the next Firefly Funhouse. And then he's kind of never done it since. And he's gone back to being comedy stooge. If we look at Jeff Jarrett, who we'll get to later, I think there is an interesting comparison to be made between Jericho and Jarrett. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I do like Jericho, and I do think that there is a place for him. I do think it was the wrong choice for this to open the show because I think 20 minutes was too long and I think it was too slow. But once it found its footing, it was a good match. And I did like Shad, really liked the ending. I thought the ending was very creative. That should be it for Jericho and Cassidy. I'd like them to do more stories where they revisit feuds from years ago because it feels like AEW sometimes doesn't like to acknowledge its own history. But I honestly appreciate them doing that, just maybe not for this one. And I think the match was good, better than it had any right to be, I thought. But we're done now, and let's move on.
I agree with so much of what you said there, especially the part about the recycling old feuds. AEW sometimes doesn't do it enough, right? A little nostalgia plays at times, and it seems like they keep old rivals away from each other, maybe even for too long. I've kind of thought about that. Maybe even if they'd have struck with a Jericho Cassidy rematch even earlier, it may have landed even more than last night. Not that I had a major problem with last night in any way, but let's move on to our next topic of this afternoon. Big return, and I know I gotta get Shadi's opinion on this one because Mina Shirakawa is back. Our Joshi wrestling specialist himself is in the building. Let's talk about it,
I
Shadi.
gotta get David is also on that list because he
That's
might
true.
know a little bit more about Joshi wrestling than I do. So I do appreciate that. But last night obviously we gotta put this out there that I feel like the timing for the booking for the women's last night was pretty weak on the AEW standpoint. They've improved vastly, but to have the only match really just being the tag team match between Mariah May and Serena Deeb versus Yuka Sakazaki and Queen Aminata, solid bout. I can't say I've been thoroughly invested in the storyline for Mariah May and Yuka Sakazaki. It's been okay. I know it is a filler storyline as we go to bigger storylines, but it just I don't know. We haven't seen Yuka in a while. We have the match with them at Grand Slam. It just nothing really builds onto it. I do find Aminata and Serena Deeb potentially feuding as something interesting because I think Queen Aminata is phenomenal. I think she had an incredible showing in the first time her and Mariah May both debuted on AEW. She's done remarkable stuff on ROH. If this is an opportunity to get her called up and get her kind of mixed in with the women's division, fine by me. I ain't got no complaints with that because I'm a big Queen stan. But let's talk about what is the most important thing, and I thought was the best women's segment last night, and that was the vignette for Mina Shirakawa. I liked it. I like it, a lot of it going off of what we saw happen at All In, where she was watching the match in attendance and how she ended off kind of, severing ties with Toni Storm for Mariah May, but ultimately it leading to Mariah May turning on her. I don't know. It's one of those cases where I feel like there is a big what can be the situation between these two women. Are they gonna, you know, be good and on good terms, or is this going to lead to a feud for it? I feel like it might be the latter part of it. But Mariah May is just on another level when it comes to being a heel. I think she plays the heel gimmick perfectly damn near. Like, I think she just, like, what she did after the match, whipping her with the title belt, shoving her face in it and whatnot I think it's really strong. And she's just continuing this dastardly, you know, mean gimmick that she's had. Like, she's just kind of pretty as she is, right? A beautiful young lady, but as evil as she is to the core, she's not gonna let the pretty face fool you. And I like that about her. I think it's a very great character to how to do it. And I think, the Mina feud is gonna happen. I want to see us keep building it, keep building her up, because this is a person that is young in her career, and you could really get her to be in I'm talking like one of your faces of the entire company level if we keep pushing her in the position for it. But all in all, solid. I'm excited for her and Mina. I think it's gonna be an incredible feud. I'm a big Mina fan. I think she's like amazing. I think she's got such a fun personality. She's got so much liveliness, the dancing into the entrance, all of that. Like, she's just really good. And I love that they've been playing off the history between these two from when they was out in Stardom being faction mates to what it is now. So yeah.
100%. And I love that. Shad, I will say though, we have to add to the lists of people that you've been misrecognized for. MDB99 commented, "I love you, Solo." So you went from Fatu to Sokoa.
I love you, Solo Sokoa. I love you, my tribal chief.
I was dying. I know, David, you've also got something to add when it comes to this.
I just wanted to add, and I don't want this to sound sort of condescending here to Yuka Sakazaki. I really like Yuka Sakazaki, and I'm really happy she's back. Personally, unlike a lot of Joshi wrestlers that I've seen on AEW TV, I'd rather see Sakazaki wrestle in Japan. And I don't know what it is. I think that Japanese wrestling, Joshi wrestling, has a very different style to American Western women's wrestling. And while Sakazaki was good in the match, and she's always good to have on TV for AEW, I think that her potential, unlike people like, say, Riho and even Shirakawa, who I think transitioned very well into that American Joshi style. I kept watching her in the tag match and seeing her do her splash off the top and her things. I was like, this is good because she's very talented, but I kind of wish she was doing this back in Tokyo Joshi again, because obviously I'm never going to dictate what someone wants to do with their career. If she wants to rest in AEW, great. She's, I'm happy she's signed. She's great, but I couldn't help when I was watching feeling like Sakazaki doesn't really have a character. At the moment, she's just sort of feels a little bit to me like, insert Joshi wrestler here. And I feel like she's got a lot more to her when she's wrestled in Japan. So I don't know. I think you need to sort of give her something to really sink her teeth into at the moment, because right now I can't help watching her and think, you're good, but I've seen you a lot better in Japan. I thought this before she got injured as well.
So,
but
to David's point, I vastly agree with that point. That's maybe a big reason why I'm not invested into her and Mariah May, because like we say a lot of times, it's like, okay, why do you deserve the opportunity to go against the AEW Women's Champion? What have you done in AEW to garner that, right? Like, that's kind of one of those situations, and that's nothing against her. It's just like he was saying, she hasn't really been given the opportunity to maybe even get comfortable. Like, reps is the most important thing, especially when you talk about wrestling overseas to wrestling in American style.
Because she's decorated in Japan. She's a 3-time Princess champion. She's a tag champion in Tokyo Joshi. She's got clout over there. She is a very respected wrestler in Japan. They've just not translated that ever, I don't think, in AEW to, which they've done for people like Riho. They've shown you why you should care about Riho, why you should care about Shirakawa, why you should care about all those people. Sakazaki's Emi Sakura, they've sort of done with, because they gave her a character at least. Sakazaki is just Joshi women's wrestler, and she's so much better than that.
It's very true. And we've got a lot of great comments, and I really do appreciate them all. MDB99 and then number one Superfly as well, even DCX Warlord, excuse me, over on Twitch. But we do got to move on to our next segment here. And this one's really interesting, David. I'm going to go right back to you basically with this. So Hangman Page main events All Out, formerly the flagship show, kind of still the flagship show, but not really, a little different now with All In and that factor. And then he calls out Jeff Jarrett. In the, like, he had the most violent cage match, syringe and all of that stuff. And we're getting Double J.
Hell yeah. Yeah,
Make
we
this
are.
one make sense to me,
Yeah,
David.
we are. Yeah, I will. I will. Team Jeff Jarrett. No, I love this. And I mean, look, the thing is, from a storyline perspective, this is where you go next, because this is the loose end. You know, Jarrett cost Hangman the gauntlet at All In. That is so once they were done with Swerve, we were always going to go back to Jarrett. They've been building it for a couple of weeks on TV. And so, you know, I am going to continue to stick up for my boy Jeff Jarrett, because I want to talk in this particular segment about how I cannot believe they've got Jeff Jarrett over as a top babyface in AEW. Jeff Jarrett as a top babyface in AEW, and the crowd love him. And when we went to when Jeff came to Cardiff and he was wrestling Ariad Ivari, and the crowd were going insane for him. You know, it's fascinating to see his resurgence, considering how hated he's been for a large percentage of his time, particularly with what he did in TNA, which I didn't see, and is probably why I like him so much. But I've always appreciated Jeff Jarrett as being a very traditionally strong wrestler, in that he knows what crowds want. He doesn't have to do much. He just has to play off it. If you actually listen to the content of Jarrett's and even Hangman's promo, they didn't say much of anything. But Hangman played the vicious heel who was about to attack the ring announcer or the commentator, and out comes the valiant babyface to spew a few catchphrases and say, "I'm going to beat you." This segment, more than anything else on Dynamite, felt like something straight out of the 80s. Like with someone was about to beat up Mean Gene, and out comes, Hogan or Savage or one of those people to say, "I'm going to get you." And because I think that Chris Jericho does a similar thing at the moment, where he plays off the sort of heel stuff that got in the same way that Jeff did. Whereas it doesn't always work for me with Chris, it's always worked with me with Jarrett. I don't know what it is, but I always get invested in whatever Jeff Jarrett is doing. I'm always invested in what Hangman's doing, because Hangman's amazing and brilliant. But yeah, I mean, it was a simple segment that furthers. I don't know when they're going to have their match. It could be Wrestle Dream. I imagine it'll be earlier. My prediction is probably the 5th anniversary show, but it could be later. They could stretch this to Wrestle Dream. And, you know, could I be speaking here as a huge Jarrett fan who's just happy he's in the spotlight and doing things again? Yeah, I know we've had our disagreements on Jarrett in the offices of WR, you know, people who love him and people who hate him. A lot more people who hate him than love him, but I stand up. I've been a Jeff Jarrett fan since he joined in 2022. But yeah, I thought this was a good segment, well delivered by both guys. And I get Swerve to Jarrett on paper doesn't sound like it, but I think it makes logical sense from a storyline perspective. And Jarrett probably had Hangman probably had Jarrett's best match in a long, long time. So I'm really excited for this.
I agree with so much of what you said. And obviously, you know, there's the running joke about me not being a big Jarrett fan. I can't lie. I've got scar tissue from childhood. He was so easy to hate. And with the long blonde hair and the roadie. I was a roadie guy.
They did good course correction with him in regards to the Owen. I think that really benefited, and that made us as fans have a very soft spot in our heart for him, because it made him seem personable. And like Jarrett was honestly in the same Chris Jericho, in the same
like
notion
jailed.
where like you're just for you, like whatever he
Character
does, you're
jail.
gonna hate it. And
the thing is,
I'm Double J's my guy too, so I always.
I was gonna say, when Jeff Jarrett was doing his heel shtick, when he won the tag titles off the Acclaimed, everyone was so angry, and I was for that very short time. Then they restarted it and they won, and I was one of the few people sat here going, "It's brilliant, it's so brilliant," because my thing with Jarrett's always been, in a land in which everyone is a modern wrestler, Jeff Jarrett uses all of his old school gimmicks. And because when Jarrett doesn't work is when everyone in a company is like him. Jarrett does work when he is the only one doing that shtick. So when that shtick got old, which it did get old last year.
Oh, no doubt about it.
It got old end of last year. Now they've course corrected, exactly as Shad said. Now they've turned him face, and now he can be the white meat baby face for Hangman to beat. I think he's going to beat him.
We've got a few comments here. We've got Jarrett's babyface run is going great. He looks like a legit professional legend, and Evil Hangman makes this whole thing even more intense. And then I loved this one from MDB999. I had to read this. Deborah was the best thing about Jarrett back in the day. That cracks me up because all I can think is you've got Deborah and then the Stone Cold connection there. You've got Karen Jarrett and Kurt Angle. It's unbelievable when you look back at the history.
That's kind of crazy, but true.
Jeff Jarrett, like that one is funky.
Because believe it or not, the other thing I should have said, despite what Ignacio wants to tell everybody, I do like old wrestling. I do. That's why I love Jarrett so much.
I mean, he is old school in the history, and obviously you can go back with, his lineage, his father being a promoter. The guy's smart. Even like some of the backstage stories, I mean, not very many people have fleeced Vince McMahon, and he absolutely did.
Got fired on live TV.
Yeah, during the Intercontinental title feud there, he got his money, and that's
he got his money.
You got to give him credit.
To royally bite him a few years later, but he did get his money.
He got his money, and it's funny because you mentioned the TNA run earlier, David. That's actually one of my favorite runs from Jarrett because I thought he was the most legit over heel for a time with the stroke and also having power behind the scenes and it being obvious on screen. I almost prefer that to his Double J work.
Well, I just want to bring it up quickly before we move on to the final segment.
Go right
I'm going to shout out my friend here, my wrestling friend, AJ, who very pertinently pointed out with Jarrett's run in TNA, because I didn't see any of it. I'm not a TNA guy. I'm sort of catching up now. He said that they said that Jarrett had to keep being given the title because nobody else in TNA was there long enough. Because whenever you put the title on someone, they disappear to WWE.
They would
be like,
signed.
who's the only person in this company who can't go to WWE because Vince won't sign him?
Jeff Jarrett.
That's when they on Jarrett again and again and again.
And if you think about the timing of when they got like Angle and Jeff Hardy down the line, it was like, oh, that makes sense that they would put the them too because they weren't going back anytime soon. That theory actually fully adds up. David, that's a really good point there. Okay, let's talk about the trios match that ended the night. We've got the Don Callis family, Ospreay, Takeshita, Fletcher. I don't think Mark Davis is ever coming back. I mean, the question we're presented with here is, are Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher going to win gold? Shad, I'm going to start with you. Talk to me about it.
Oof, man. Yes, they are going to win gold. They are going to beat the Bucks of Youth. I have them winning that match. I'll say it for a few reasons. Will Ospreay is the ultimate audible that you can have to make anything feel rejuvenated and cool again. And that tag team title and that tag team and the Young Bucks have sucked a lot of life. And it's not the Young Bucks I'm not saying I don't like the Young Bucks. They're one of the greatest tag teams of all time. But the EVPs and how they've been given the titles numerous time after time after time, we have just not cared as much anymore. And the EVP gimmick and the storyline is kind of, it's a little bit of a roadblock, and it's more so with those two than anybody else in the crew. Because I think Okada's still great, and I think Jack Perry's still doing great things. So Will Ospreay is the coolest guy in the entire company at the moment. Like You see it from when he steps out there and his song hits and the fans cheering the Ospreay to when he gets in the ring and wrestles. I think he can be the lifeline that gets us to be interested back into the tag team titles as well. I think this is something that's going to benefit Kyle Fletcher. I, was like you prior to it, where I was like, I don't know what we see in him as much as others. He's mentioned in high regards, but I don't know. Something is missing. But as of late, the last few months, I'm seeing the vision, and I think him working with Ospreay as a tag team champs, I think it's a nice pivot and it's a nice change. I think they're gonna win. I don't know. I think they're a bit undeniable at this moment, man. And the second part to it is this: in 2 weeks, we got Will Ospreay versus Ricochet for the other belt, for the Continental belt. I think he's gonna drop it to Ricochet. I think Ricochet is the brand new guy. I think him getting one over Ospreay right out the gate is something that we can continue this feud for a later time period. But I think it also benefits Ricochet in a way. And I feel like that's something that we cannot ignore. So in that case, Ospreay still does have gold, but he could let go of the other gold in the standpoint. But I think at the moment, I think Ospreay being a giver that he is, I think him running the tag division with Fletcher is probably what's best for the AEW tag team division because we need a new team to have it. We need somebody that's going to make people invested and want to watch matches and get in the storylines. And I just think Ospreay does an incredible job within making you care about storylines. I think every storyline he's been given thus far in AEW has been a slam dunk. And I think with him as a tag team champs, it can only benefit giving us storylines that we may care about for the tag team titles. A new fun team. It's not a random team. They are United Empire, so they have, their faction mates. And I think it's beneficial, man, for his young bull, Kyle Fletcher. And down the line, whenever they break up, you can draw that as the budding wedge. But at the moment, yeah, no doubt, bro, I'm giving Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher the gold. I feel like it's a little bit of a no-brainer the more I talk about it and convince myself. Maybe I am going crazy, Clark. Am I going crazy? I don't know.
I truly don't believe so, Shad. Actually, I like the idea because the more I'm thinking about it, you're right. The tag team division needs an injection of new talent. Will Ospreay, being the star that he is, it benefits first and foremost Kyle Fletcher a ton. It puts eyes on the division again, and it can lead to the re-rise of FTR.
To me,
which is necessary at this point, I think.
I hate doing parallels, but to me, it's kind of like, and I swear, I think they could do a better job with it too.
Yeah.
What we have in WWE when Finn Balor won the tag team titles with JD McDonough, right? But I think it makes more sense, and I think they're going to defend it more because you can't convince Will Ospreay not to wrestle a dang match. That man will wrestle you and me if you wanted to go for the AEW tag team titles if you wanted to, Clark. So
yeah, seriously. I mean, even MDB said give the Outrunners a shot here. I'm like, I don't know about that. I like them a lot, but
they could
just
be an
not
opponent
quite
for him.
yet.
I don't know about giving the title, but they could be an opponent for him.
Yes. David, though, I got to get your opinion on this. The tag team picture as a whole, do you like the idea of Ospreay and Fletcher going on a tag run, going after the Bucks? Or do you see it going a different direction? Maybe we had a comment over here from Numero One Superfly where he thought this is actually going to lead to Fletcher turning on Ospreay and it being Ospreay versus the Callis family. Do you see either of those scenarios something entirely different?
I think it's more likely Takeshita attacks Ospreay than Fletcher does, but it could certainly still happen. This is a very complicated one. I was all ready to come on here and tell you no. That they're not going to win the gold. The Bucks are going to retain, and it's going to lead into maybe Ospreay Takeshita 2, Fletcher Takeshita, and that Takeshita would sort of break away and we'd sort of end this Don Callis. Because the Don Callis family has sort of failed now, I think. Because you've got Will Hobbs is out injured. Guevara, I think, was part of it for a little bit, wasn't he? And he's now off doing something totally different again. Right. Roosh is doing his own thing. So there's not much left now. So I would just have Callis and Takeshita be their own deal and let Fletcher and Ospreay go off and do their own thing. Because at the moment, the group feels a bit of a mismatch. The more Shad talked, though, the more I agreed with him. The tag division, as the Casino Tag Gauntlet pointed out, the tag division has a lot of talent and a lot of talent not being used very well. Do I think that them doing them straight away, them putting the belts on Ospreay and Fletcher would take away from a potential Young Bucks versus Outrunners match that I think could be really fun for the tag titles, even if Outrunners don't win? Yes, I do. Because Outrunners have got massively over. And I think that the Bucks and the Outrunners would make really good partners. But you can do the Outrunners versus Ospreay and Fletcher. The problem is then you've got two teams that are massively over against each other, which doesn't, I don't think, suit the Outrunners, because I think people will pick Ospreay over the Outrunners. You know, regardless of what you want, I think that's what the crowd would go for. So I think it's difficult to be the opposite to Shad, so that we can have this, you know, come up next week. I'm going to say no, they don't win, so that we can have the contrast for next week's show inevitably, where we, you know, go ha ha ha, one of us was right. But I think it could go either way. It's going to be a great match. Just quickly talk on the actual match itself, because I didn't actually speak on the trios match.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Very good match, as expected. You know, those six guys. The best work was, I think, Ospreay working with the Elite. In any combination, there was you know, some of the spots and the slingshots that Ospreay was taking was incredible. For me, I gave it 4 stars in my WR review, and I've seen people give it higher than that. I thought that all the action was great. I feel like, putting my critic's hat on, I think the formula was a bit samey for the first half, until it really found its sort of insane feat. It was a lot of the same sort of thing, particularly given we got the picture-in-picture ad breaks full screen and with commentary. So we were seeing the Bucks, the work over spots the Bucks were doing 2, 3, 4 times. But, you know, as a 20-minute main event goes, it was really, really good. It was I like the use of the Coriolis, Ospreay and Fletcher's finisher, because that sets up United Empire. You know, that binds them together. They're bringing that back. That'll undoubtedly be a near fall in the match, whether they win or not. But my guess is they're going to have a banging match next week at Grand Slam, but the Bucks retain. But I could see it going the other way.
I think that's a very fair assessment. And we've got a bunch of comments here. And MDB899, he presented basically a bunch of storylines that he thinks are similar to this. And not to play devil's advocate, because we really do appreciate all the comments and you tuning in for the show. But I will say, all of those that you mentioned, Adam Cole and MJF and Danny Garcia, and Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends, they gave us a reason for them to dislike each other at the very least. And that is important when it comes to storytelling. If it feels recycled, that's fair. But at the end of the day, I want them to dislike each other.
Yeah. I also don't think any
for
of
there
those
to be a payoff.
I don't think any of those 3 storylines are the same. Adam Cole and MJF was not built in the same way that MJF and Daniel Garcia was. Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends never paid off. You know, they made up, and aside from, no, they didn't. That's a lie, because Trent turned. But Chuck stayed. But you know, that was a proper turn. In the same way, but that was lifelong best friends against MJF letting his guard down and letting somebody in, against MJF sort of mock mentoring somebody. They've got the same DNA, but they are all the same. But they are all different stories. I understand. There are a lot of friends falling out. I think WWE are terrible for this right now, and I don't think AEW are much better. Can we stop trying to break up every single blinking tag team you have? But we like
with the New Day.
This is like a wrestling thing.
Yeah, this is a wrestling
company
thing.
does it.
But I don't think that those scenarios are the same, and I don't really want to see Fletcher and Ospreay break up, because I like their team, and I don't see. We've seen Ospreay and Fletcher wrestle. We've seen heel Fletcher. We've seen heel Fletcher versus face Ospreay. So I don't see what Fletcher gains unless there's something with Mark Davis if he's coming back.
See, that's the thing. If Mark Davis was coming back, then I'm okay with it. But I would almost actually rather, if we're going to do even the scenario of Ospreay versus the Callis family, I'd rather have Fletcher go with him and be replaced by some big super stud, right? By Don Callis. And just to make Don Callis look that much more in control of the situation, if we're going to go about it that way.
Yeah, I just feel like Callis would benefit right now from focus because he's got his fingers in a lot of different pies and in a lot of different talents. And while he's great at that, because Callis is a fantastic hype man, I think his best the best work he's doing as a hype man right now is, and the person who needs that backup is Takeshita, because Takeshita is possibly, I think, you could make the argument he, outside of Ospreay, might be the best wrestler in AEW from an in-ring standpoint. Watch the G1.
He's
but
dang good.
But he's insane. But he does need a manager, I think.
Yeah,
and that's where Callis can help him. I don't think Fletcher needs a manager right now. And I don't think you need to build another Callis family. Just keep Takeshita and Callis and keep that be the act and use it to skyrocket Takeshita.
Yeah, I really do like, and I like the idea of Fletcher staying loyal, maybe because of United Empire to Ospreay. That one, dot connecting wise.
That kid is a baby face to me at the moment. He's got a little bit of time to learn to be a heel, but I'd keep him a baby face. Like I think Ospreay having him under the wing is not a bad idea. I think it's not a standpoint of him being Ospreay Jr. in a disrespectful way, but it's a standpoint where, like, yes, he can be like the next Will Ospreay as a guy who's, phenomenal as a professional wrestler, and because he's got to grow within the character. He's got to grow more comfortable as a talker. Stuff like that comes within time. He's never been on a weekly TV show like an AEW, like a Raw, or SmackDown, whatever it may be, right? This is all new to him in a standpoint compared to other places he's done. And I think he's doing good. I think if you were to show me what he did when he first came to what he's doing now, I think he's progressed a lot.
I think he's been outstanding. At the end of the day, though, that does bring us to the end of the show. Thank you so much, everybody that tuned in. If you haven't already smashed the like button and subscribed, please do. It helps us out immensely. We really appreciate it. We will be back tomorrow, same time, same place, noon Pacific, 3 in the East. It's 2 Central. That's, of course, 8 o'clock in the UK and 9 a.m. in Hawaii. Thank you, as always, on behalf of me, Clark, David Sheldon, Shad. Have an excellent Thursday, and we appreciate you so much.